Yo, what's up guys, Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So this video is a quick preview and prediction for Jamel Herring versus Frampton. Now this fight goes down on the 3rd of April, takes place in Dubai, and of course the WBO Super Featherweight Championship will be on the line, which is held by Jamel Herring. I'm not going to lie to you guys, this fight for some reason completely slipped my mind until I saw Johnny Boy's prediction video for this fight, so that really got me making this video, but big up to Johnny Boy. But yeah, all in all, interesting fight. On paper this fight should be competitive, and yeah, an interesting style matchup in my opinion, so I am looking forward to it. But let's briefly break down the tail of a tape, and we shall go from there. So the champion, Jamel Herring, has a record of 22 wins, 2 defeats, 0 draws, 10 of those 22 wins coming by way of knockout. Frampton has a record of 28 wins, 2 defeats, 0 draws, 16 of those 28 wins coming by way of knockout. So as you can see from the tail of the tape, Frampton has had more fights, he's certainly more experienced, and all in all, he has fought better competition than Jamel Herring. Jamel Herring is listed as 5'10" with a 72-inch reach, whereas Frampton is listed as 5'5" with a 65-inch reach. So Jamel Herring is much taller, much longer. He's got a 5-inch height advantage and a 7-inch reach advantage. Jamel Herring is 35 years old, Frampton is 34 years old, so both guys are in the tail end of their careers. Jamel Herring is a southpaw, whereas Frampton is an orthodox fighter. Whether that plays a factor in this fight, we shall see. But yeah, now the tail of the tape is out of the way, let's briefly break down the fight, what each guy should do, etc, etc. Now one thing we do have to talk about, in my opinion, is where both guys are at in their careers. I followed Frampton for a long time, and I followed Jamel Herring now for a long time, and both guys are definitely in the tail end of their careers. It almost appears that both guys have one foot out of the door. Frampton has been talking about retirement a lot recently. In fact, he's saying if he loses this fight, he will definitely retire. And, you know, Jamel Herring himself, after the Jonathan Oquendo fight, was saying that Frampton could be his last fight. So both guys have one foot out of the door. Both guys have openly discussed retirement. And to me, that could be conceived as a red flag in regards to their ambitions as fighters. So, you know, that is something I'm definitely considering, and that's what makes this fight, in my opinion, well, one of the reasons why it makes this fight quite hard to call. So, I do wonder where both guys are at in their careers in terms of headspace, but in terms of the stylistic matchup, I guess we shall start with Jamel Herring. Now, Jamel Herring is a tall, rangy southpaw. He's massive for super featherweight, and he's a guy who can't really fight on the inside all that effectively. So for me, it's up to Jamel Herring to keep this fight on the outside. We've seen when he couldn't do that against Denis Shafikov, he got worked on the inside, so he needs to keep a shorter, smaller man in Frampton at bay. Now, Jamel Herring does have a good jab, combined with nice footwork, good lateral movement, good foot speed. He needs to be boxing and moving in this fight. He needs to keep Frampton on the outside. Frampton, as we know, a very short, compact guy, and on the outside, he is not the greatest boxer in the world. He's not going to stick the jab and outbox a guy like Jamel Herring from the outside. We saw in the second Leo Santa Cruz fight, Leo Santa Cruz kept that fight on the outside for the vast majority, and Frampton really couldn't get close to him, if we're being honest. Now, Jamel Herring is not going to fight with the same volume as Leo Santa Cruz, but he can keep it long, and I think he does actually have better lateral movement, better footwork than Leo Santa Cruz, and he needs to utilise that to, you know, keep Frampton at bay. Obviously, you can't be sticking and moving too much and not making Frampton respect you. Jamel definitely needs to catch Carl with something worthwhile, just to keep Frampton at bay. One thing I've noticed about Jamel Herring is he's got a real nice uppercut on the back foot, so he'll take a half step back, draw you in, and he's got a real nice uppercut which he can throw to body and head. I think that shot against the smaller man in Frampton could be an effective shot at getting Carl Frampton's respect. Also, Carl Frampton, when he's fighting a taller, rangier guy and when he's being kept on the outside, he has a tendency to kind of jump in and rush in. That uppercut in that scenario could be very effective, and also the way that Jamel Herring can take half a step back and then time you with his straight left hand out of that southpaw stance. These will be effective shots at getting the respect of Carl Frampton, but ultimately it's up to Jamel Herring to control the real estate in this fight, as they would say. Keep it on the outside, keep it a boxing match. If he does that, I can't really see a way that Carl Frampton wins this fight. Bear in mind as well, in my opinion, at super featherweight, Carl Frampton is definitely above his natural weight, and on top of that, he's 34 years old, getting past it now, so yeah. Ultimately, Jamel Herring needs to make Carl Frampton chase this fight. He needs to build up an early lead on the scorecards, so he can kind of sit back, jab, move, etc., and coast to a points victory. And as Carl Frampton gets more desperate as the fight goes on, then you can start looking at sitting down on some of those counter shots and trying to walk Carl Frampton into something big. Jamel Herring isn't a big puncher, but he's snappy enough to get your respect, that sort of power. So yeah, let's be honest, we all know what Jamel Herring needs to do in this fight to win. Keep it on the outside, it's that simple. As for Carl Frampton, I think his job is a lot trickier, being the shorter, stockier man with less reach. He's not the explosive guy he once was at super bantamweight and even featherweight, Carl Frampton, so he needs to find a way to get to the inside and make those moments count. In recent fights, I've not seen the same sort of head movement from Carl Frampton. Well, certainly not the head movement that he used in previous fights in the past. So in this fight, you need to see Carl Frampton utilise that head movement a lot more, make himself a short target, and, try and slip inside the jab and work. It's up to Carl Frampton to close the distance in this fight. He needs to fight this fight on the front foot, with head movement, also feints to try and draw the lead from Jamel Herring. When you draw the lead, then get under his punches, get on the inside and work. And yeah, while Carl Frampton is the smaller guy, while applying pressure, he cannot afford to neglect that jab. A stiff jab to get on the inside, utilise that double jab, combine that with the feints, and, really give something for Jamel Herring to think about. So obviously Carl Frampton's main issue in this fight is closing the distance. Obviously every event he does that, he needs to make those moments count, working the body up close, try and drain the legs of Jamel Herring, try and reduce that movement of Herring and make him more stationary, and also be aware of the clinch in this fight, because when Jamel Herring has Carl Frampton close, I would imagine Jamel Herring is going to go for the clinch, because like I say, he's not a great inside fighter. It's not that Carl Frampton is even a great inside fighter himself, he's just a lot more accustomed at it in comparison to Jamel Herring. So Carl Frampton needs to be aware of that clinch, and he needs to make sure that he's always got a hand free to work up close, to chip away at the body, land short shots to the head, etc, etc. This fight for Carl Frampton will be like chopping down a tree. I can't see him going in there and landing one clean shot on Jamel Herring and knocking him out. He's going to have to land an accumulation of shots to body and head to drain Jamel Herring, and then who knows, maybe force a stoppage towards the end of the fight. I just find it very hard to see Carl Frampton knocking Jamel Herring out with one shot. I think it's very unlikely he wins on points. So for me, he needs to play the pressure fighter. He needs to up his punch output in comparison to previous fights, and he really needs to let it all hang out, basically. For me, this fight requires pure aggression from Carl Frampton. Obviously, again, he needs to do it in a smart manner, head movement coming forwards, feinting his way in, doubling up on the jab to get on the inside, and also maybe try to, counterpunch while on the front foot. Carl Frampton is very explosive. If he can draw the lead while he's coming forwards, make Herring miss, and then explode with a counter, whether that be the overhand right of Carl Frampton or his left hook, whatever it may be. So, yeah, Frampton needs to really force the issue in this fight. I'm not particularly sure whether he's got that in him anymore, especially at this weight. It takes a lot carrying that extra weight to fight that sort of fight for 12 rounds. So it's one of those fights where I kind of struggle to pick, if I'm being honest. Both guys, like I say, are kind of at the end of their careers, and both guys have admitted that. Really, this fight could be down to who's got more in the tank, who's got more ambition. I'm not really sure on that. For whatever reason though, if I had a gun to my head and you asked me to pick, I think the safe bet is Jamel Herring on points in this fight. But I could be wrong. Interestingly enough, Kyle Frampton right now, as I look right now, is the favourite to win this fight. Jamel Herring is evens. I think they are very good odds on Jamel Herring. So if you want to bet, the value right now is with Jamel Herring. But there we go. And bear in mind he's the champion as well. But yeah, my pick officially is Jamel Herring on points. But I have to confess, not really confident. Anyway, share your thoughts below. It's been your guy Delboy. Peace.